Have you been able to see him at all? And has he told you anything about prison?
No, we got to see him one time. That was that Monday, right before the plea deal. That Monday
right before the plea deal, and that was it.
Are you guys frustrated with the direction they may have put him through?
Yes, I am. To me, that all they wanted to do was just save his life. Just save his life. Well, save his life and life in prison, to me, there's no difference. And I just want him to fight.
Are you guys worried about some of the backlash about maybe coming out and speaking on behalf of Chris and what it might do to your guys' relationship, and speaking out like this about a woman who can't defend herself right now?
Well, Shanann, I mean, you have to get to know her to be around her. Put it that way.
Her family's attorney sent us this statement. Their false statements, however hurtful and inaccurate, will never alter the truth about Shanann and will never alter the truth about the crimes committed by their son. Her memory and reputation deserves to be protected, and her family is fully prepared to do so.
Is there anything we can do?
Just your love and support is all I need.
But this is what you want?
Yeah, this is my decision. This is what I'm gonna do.
But don't ever confess to something you didn't do.
I know, but this is my decision, though. This is all me, okay?
No. You have to remember, we're strong.
I know. This is my decision, though.
So please do whatever you need to do to find your voice, and just do what you need to do, okay?
Okay.
Don't give up, please. Do you promise me?
I know. I'm staying strong. Don't worry.
Chris, will you consider fighting? Will you consider it?
I'm gonna stay strong. I'm not losing any faith. Just I got my Bible with me, and that's I read a lot of it each night, and then I get down. It seems like the next verse is kind of like waiting for me to read. So.
Well, please consider fighting. Please consider it.
A lot of people after that, all them 2,000 papers come out today.
They had nothing.
A lot of people questioning a lot of things on this case.
Yes.
There's a whole lot.
Yes. They had nothing. Yes, honey, they had nothing. Nothing.
They had a theory, that's all they
They had a theory, and that's it.
They have a whole lot to prove it.
I wish we could have talked to you these last 3 months. No. I wish you would have called us. But he couldn't. I know that. They wouldn't let you, but you don't do everything everybody tells you to do. You have to go with your gut. You got to go with what you feel is right.
If I would have called and while everything was going on, I mean, all these calls go straight to the district attorney.
Oh, I know. Yeah. We know that. All we want to do is say we love you, support you, fight.
I know.
That's all. That's it.
It's just a matter of the DA. I mean, the district attorney. They were watching me like a hawk. I mean, every letter I got, even if it was from some crazy person, or if it was from someone that I knew, it was scanned and it was sent over to the DA before I even got it.
I know. We just want you to know we're behind you. Yes, and that we support you. We support you 100%. We know what she was like. Okay? We just love you. And they can record all they want.
I know, but just remember, she was a wonderful woman too. Okay.
We know that.
I don't want the lasting memory of anybody to be something that was.
None of it. So sweet. None of it should have happened. None of it happened. None of it. Okay. We love you.
I don't want anybody's memory being negative because she was wonderful.
No, it's not, honey. You were so sweet. I understand. It's not. But we just don't want your last. We don't want you to be forgotten in this either. No. We're fighting for you.
You have 1 minute left.
I know, but will you fight?
I'm gonna stay strong. Don't worry. I'm not going anywhere.
Okay. Well, we know you're not going to. We know that part, but we want you to. Will you fight this?
Will you willing to talk to an attorney? If we get one set up.
If we can get one set up to come see you, will you talk to them?
I mean, I'm probably not going to be here much longer.
I know that. When you go to your next place.
I just want to see where I'm going to go. Maybe I'll go somewhere. I mean, might stay in Colorado. I might go somewhere else. I don't know. So it just kind of depends on where they want to put me.
Mm-hmm. So just think about it, okay?
Will you think about it?
I just want to get through these. The last 2 weeks is pretty rough. So it's just kind of like I just want to.
Okay.
Okay.
You just gotta give him time. You gotta give him time.
I know.
It's a lot.
He's gotta give him time to get situated and get his mindset.
We love you, though. We love you no matter what. I love you so much.
I know. I just want everybody's last memory to be happy ones of everybody.
They are. They are, honey. You don't have to worry about that. No, you don't. Everybody, we all have happy memories to look back on. We just,
And just stay strong.
yes, we want you to stay strong. And I don't understand, though, why you didn't want to fight.
But thought I would have fallen.
Yeah, it was fun.
So, but
I know. We know that. I know.
Okay.
We know that. I know. I just.
But when you get where you're going, we'll come see you.
Yeah, we'll come see you and.
Hello, thanks for stopping by Trauma and True Crime. I sincerely appreciate all the love about my previous video covering the latest debacle on what some call Watts Island. Have you ever traveled from a cold climate to a humid climate and gotten slammed by a wall of nasty, wet, fumy, stinky heat as soon as you stepped onto the jetway? That's me landing on what I will call Planet Watts, because I felt like an alien landing on an uninhabitable planet. The weather is gassy with a 99% chance of combustion over here. Before I go on, please consider hitting that subscribe button if you aren't already a subscriber, and thank you for smashing one of the thumbs and letting me know that what you think about what I have to say in the comments below. As you know, I'm always up for the debate without the hate. I also need to make a correction from my last video. Cindy Watts did not write any part of her book. It was apparently written by Kathleen Houston. Thank you, Critical K, for the correction. There are others who may have relevant corrections to my videos, and if you do, I will mention them in subsequent videos. I'm always up for corrections if I'm incorrect. As you may have surmised from my last video and the discussion and comments, I don't profess to be an investigator, and when I get things wrong, I'm willing to be shown that and then change my thinking if appropriate. What I do is observe the amazing investigative work that other creators do, and then based on my knowledge, background, and experience, I develop an analysis. Sometimes I even go so far as to develop a theory. If the theory I develop doesn't seem to have been thrown out anywhere else, and it requires me to verify additional facts or for me to validate the theory, I'll investigate with my limited abilities. Sometimes I find new stuff, and sometimes I don't. Some of you saw me interviewed on Armchair Detective last week, and by the way, thank you for having me, Alan, and for all the people who watched and subscribed as a result of that. I see you. In that interview, we touched on my experience with the press, but I forgot to mention that a few years ago, I worked for the Wall Street Journal for 6 months when their technology section was splitting with their longtime partner, All Things D. The Journal hired me to help them launch their new technology section. I also happen to have a good relationship with Walt Mossberg and Kara Swisher from All Things D, which was turned into Recode and then sold off to Vox. So I was able to serve as a buffer between the warring parties until they finished their split. I sat in the newsroom amongst around 30 journalists for that entire 6 months, and I can tell you from firsthand experience that legitimate newsrooms are absolutely maniacal about their journalistic process. They go through a very rigorous fact-checking process before they hit publish. If the reporter uses an unattributed quote, like "a source close to the company said," etc., they're required by the paper to get 2 independent sources to verify that quote. Then the reporter has to get the editor to check it. The editor has to verify that reporter's sources. If they don't check out, the editor won't run the story. I knew this before I worked inside the Wall Street Journal, but I didn't know to the extent that I do until after I worked there. Sometimes an entire story will get put down the sinkhole because they weren't able to get those sources checked. Is the process perfect? No. Does every single reporter and every single editor follow it down to the letter? There's no way to know that. But there are checks and balances in the journalistic process. So it's not legitimate to paint a broad brush over all of media and say that they're following a dark and coordinated agenda. But I'm also not going to sit here and be a defender of all mainstream media because they don't deserve that either. The point is that legitimate reporters and news organizations take their jobs and roles very seriously, and individuals in those roles don't deserve to be attacked as puppets to some higher agenda. So that's a little bit of some inside information for you about how the news media works, but that's not what today's video is about. I've said several times that trauma and true crime go hand in hand. Well, the other thing that goes hand in hand are trauma and families, especially when true crime and the media are involved. And now that I've landed on planet Watts, I'm here to tell you things ain't normal, folks. Let me step back a bit. Something I learned from working with Steve Jobs is that one of his geniuses was focus. He was very singular in purpose. When he was working on the iPhone, it was infuriatingly difficult to get him and others at Apple to talk about anything else. I know this because I was working on the Apple TV launch at the same time, which happened just before, and he famously called Apple TV his hobby. But I was still supposed to get reviews for it as if it was the best thing since sliced bread. Luckily, it worked, but I digress. Sometimes Steve's tunnel vision was really hard, but in many ways it made my job easy because I was able to develop a keen sense of priorities. Oh, this isn't about the iPhone? It's not important. Talk to me after next week. Will that thing you're doing get us where we're trying to go? No? Put it aside. Focus. Then when I went to Google and later to other startups that are heavily influenced by Google, they drilled into my head that every decision must be based on data, facts. I'd go to a product manager and I'd say, here's my launch plan. And they would say, show me your data. And I couldn't say, but I know it's right because I feel it. I had to show them the data or I couldn't persuade them to agree with my plan. So I come today with a message about focusing on our priorities, and I come with a data-based argument about why the Watts family has their answers. They just refuse to listen, as I suspect they have for Chris's entire life. Stick with me and I'll show you why. But first, let's focus, all right? What's the priority in this case right now? Our priority is letting Shanann, Bella, Cece, and Nico rest in peace and letting her loved ones alone to grieve.
No! Nothing else matters.
And nothing else matters. That includes the Watts. They're not grieving though. They're stuck in denial, in a constant battle, fighting everyone else and demanding that everyone else absorb and resolve their feelings for them. But everyone else hasn't fallen in line, so soldiers rise and soldiers fall. Then they dig deeper down the barrel and find more soldiers to keep them going and keep their fight going. As long as they keep that fight going, they stall that grief for everyone else. The longer this goes on, the more damage the family is causing to themselves, their children, their children's children, their family legacy, the Ruseks, and all the people Shanann left behind. Not to mention the kind and loving YouTubers who pour their hearts and souls into begging them over and over to stop. Because until the spears are put away, and they're put all the way down, everyone the Watts perceives as against them needs to watch their backs. And and they're going to continue to have their backs up until the Watts put those spears away. The main purpose of this channel is to point out trauma in real time. This is trauma in real time. And the only people who have the keys to turn it off are the Watts. So that's the priority part. But what do we do about this ecosystem of bottom feeders on social media who see their priorities differently? In all honesty, there's nothing I could say that could convince a craven cabal of parasites from creating some way to feed off of the sludge of a household name that may have dollars attached to it. But I can show that when the Watts proclaim over and over again that they just want to get to the truth, that they don't mean what they say. Because after I produced my last video and secured my trip on that rocket to Planet Watts, I was nearly blinded by the immediate but unmistakable glare of gaslights, two-way mirrors, and future fakes. But guess what?
See right through you.
That's right. Yeah, those of us who have been on one of these gassy planets before recognize it right away. And we don't fall for it. We've been through the worst of it. And we've come across the other side. And we're here to call you on it. I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a private investigator, but I know emotional abuse and neglect and rapid trauma delivery systems when I see them. And I'm crying uncle. If you weren't paying attention to the video package that opened this video, go back and check it out again after you finish watching, because what I did for you was I counted for you 11 different times that the Watts begged Chris to fight. Chris told him he made his decision and they just ignored him. They just flat out ignored him. Now I want to play for you a different package of clips from the same set of conversations, and I'm going to ride along with you so we can observe their behavior together. Just take a listen. Okay.
There's so many people out there that love you and pray for you. And they know what kind of man you are. Everybody knows what kind of man you are. So, you are made for something else, and I don't know what it is yet, but...
So, it's completely understandable to tell a son that you love them no matter what, which they do over and over. And I've cut those parts out because that's very, very, very understandable. What the Watts do here is act as if Chris never murdered somebody. They don't ever hold him accountable. In fact, they actually lift him up even higher and hold him to this standard that is almost impossible for any human being to uphold. Listen.
You are someone that I always felt that you had a pure heart. A pure heart, a good soul. No one could ever say anything bad about you. You were the kindest person there ever was.
And it kind of makes you wonder who she's actually talking about, if she really means him, or just listen.
You were my smart kid. I mean, you were my... Lord, you never even rebelled. Kid, you were perfect. You were the perfect kid. Everything you did with... You were so conscientious. You are so conscientious. And you
Still
better stay strong
conscientious.
because I have got to stay strong. Okay? I have got...
So now she's telling him that he must stay strong. It's up to him to stay strong because she has to stay strong. So the burden is on him to stay strong so that she stays strong. Do you understand the dependency here?
Stay strong because this is we all will get through this together.
They all need him.
You, me, Ronnie, Jamie, all of us will get through this together because we love you so much.
I love you too.
I don't care what you did. I love you so much.
It doesn't even matter. She doesn't care what he did.
Stay strong.
I am.
Promise me.
I will.
Promise me. I can't lose you.
I won't do anything like that.
No, I can't lose you.
So it sounds like he's interpreting that she's saying, please don't do anything to yourself in jail. Don't, commit suicide or something like that. It sounds like he's interpreting it that way. But she's saying, don't take the plea deal. Don't take the plea deal.
What pictures did you choose for the
Because I can't lose you to jail. I can't ever not touch you anymore.
People out there they know who you are, and they know what kind of person you are,
but they really don't. Everybody's saying that.
You make me want to start reading the Bible.
It's an amazing book for sure.
And Ronnie got baptized.
Yeah, he told me about that.
You're the only person in this world that can make that man do anything.
So now he's elevated to the level of a savior. Now he's a Jesus in their family, because he's the only person that could have ever driven Ronnie and the people in his family to go to Jesus, go to the Bible, and get baptized.
Hey, Tom. Oh my God, we're so happy to hear from you.
Now, it's understandable. They haven't been able to really have a good conversation with Chris since he was incarcerated, but that is over the top.
You okay?
I can hear you great. We love you. We believe you. Chris, I love you. I love you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, you
And one told you. Did you ever get our letter?
I just got it today.
Today. Of all days, you got it today. Unbelievable. Yeah. Yes.
Well, it's the thing, whenever you send letters, you have to screen them, and they have to, all that kind of stuff, because people send, contraband through, the mail. So they gotta screen them, and I think people even got so, even so sneaky that they were putting, drugs behind stamps, so they gotta make sure everything's kosher before
There was nothing there, Chris. There was nothing there, but...
So now the family's saying, well, don't they understand that we would never do anything like that to you? So how could they ever target our mail to you? As if the Watts family was targeted by the authorities, and nobody else goes through this when their loved one pleads guilty to a felony. As if they were singled out. And they're the only people who aren't allowed to talk to their loved one while he's dealing with something like this.
We didn't send anything. We didn't send anything. I thought that...
And it's not as if they aren't able to seek out the kind of information they need to figure out what happens when this goes on. And I'm sure that I know sometimes it can be very confusing, especially if you're going through it for the first time. But they're acting as if they are complete victims in this situation. That I know they're victims because it's their grandchildren, but that they have been victimized by everybody else.
When you didn't call us, I said, you just didn't want to talk to us.
And the reason Chris didn't get back to him is because he didn't want to talk to them. It's all personal. Everything's personal. Everything's on them. Everything's personal on them. It can't be because there are far bigger implications than what's going to happen to the Watts family.
I had to do everything I had to do to get in there to talk to you. I did whatever I had to do to talk to you. I listened to whatever they had to say to me. Honey, I never believed it, any of it. Just know that your mama's been fighting for you. I have been on Channel 7, Channel 9 in Denver, the Denver Post, everybody.
No, let him talk.
Okay, go ahead.
dominating the conversation.
All right, we want to hear your voice. We just want to hear your voice. Yeah.
That's all right. It's yeah. I've read all the stuff in the paper, so.
Have you?
So right there, he's telling them, I heard you. I heard you. I heard you before I made my decision. And I still made a different decision. Live with it.
There is so much out there, and there is so much support out there. You don't know how much support is out there for you. Chris, I have more faith now than I ever did before. Me too. You know, I think we've all found God, and you know, if there's any.
And your dad even got baptized.
Yeah. I mean, I can't tell you. You're the only one that could have done that. You brought us all. You brought us all closer.
Once again, he's
and that was because of you.
a martyr saint now because he
That's the saving grace with all this. You know?
pled guilty to
Yes,
murder.
it is. It's the saving grace with all of this. Is that he loves us and he forgives us and he loves us and you know
Anything's possible.
anything is possible.
I know.
There's a mountain to climb. Yep, and you got.
So I don't think the Watts really understand what faith in God means. It means that it doesn't mean that God's going to come down and work and change the fact that your child murdered somebody and make it all better. It means that when things like this happen, you have faith that you're going to get through the hard times. But it doesn't mean you get to change that fact.
Climb that mountain.
And you'll get you there.
Yep. And he will get you there. You brought us all so much closer to God. Yeah.
That's so I was hoping like everybody would, you know.
And little bits in the background trying to say,
Because I have, trust me.
don't you get it?
Yes. I believe you have.
Have you
Please be safe because I just can't deal with this.
Okay.
If you're not safe,
You'll be safe, then.
we just want you to be safe.
You will. You will have to.
We love you so much, and there's nothing I wouldn't do for you. Nothing.
Just remember, we're always here.
We're always here.
Now, that is understandable feeling to have as a mother. There's nothing I wouldn't do for my children either. But I wouldn't murder anybody. And I wouldn't condone them murdering anybody. And I wouldn't get a bunch of people to gang up on his murdered family.
Okay.
Oh, honey, I'm so sad. I just don't know how to get out of this sadness.
Take time, buddy.
I just don't know how.
I know.
Yeah.
We love you so much.
I love you too.
You still got commissary stuff, or you used up all that?
They just,
We just got
we
her.
just felt like we were in enemy territory.
Now she's talking about the
We used her so we get there and talk.
witness
wanted
testimony.
To talk to you, and then when you didn't get my letter, you know, that I had overnighted,
The victim
when you
testimony.
didn't get it till just the other day, you know, I didn't know what to think anymore. I was thinking you just didn't want to talk to us. And are you still
Because
there?
it's all about
November
you.
11th, so. But I didn't get it till, November 23rd, so.
I know. You didn't get our letter. And then I didn't know what to think anymore.
The letter wasn't going to change anything. It's as if you thought that you were so persuasive that you had the ability to change everything with your persuasion.
I figured you just didn't want to talk to us. And the attorneys wouldn't let us talk to you. Nobody would let us talk to you.
But that's pretty normal across the board for, attorneys not
That's
letting,
normal.
people talk as far as that.
Listen, everything's recorded and everything's set out of the way, so.
Because you had messed up the case.
Saying to your son you love him.
Now, after hearing that, doesn't it make you wonder what it was like for Chris as a little kid growing up? Did his voice even exist? did his opinion about his own life even matter? If he told them things like, I like to play baseball, was he told, no, you don't. You like football, boy? When Chris is talking to himself and making decisions in his head, whose voice does he hear actually making those decisions for him? His own? His mother's? His father's? His sister's? Does he get confused? Which decision does he go with? It just makes one wonder, whose life is Chris living anyway? And who is he living it for? If he's such a good boy, does that mean he just dutifully went along with everything they said because he simply had no choice? If you listen to Cindy and Ronnie, there's nothing he can do wrong. He is still, to this day, a perfect child. Why? Is he simply immune to the laws that all of us are supposed to abide by every day? Is that what it was like to be Chris growing up? He lives however his parents tell him to live. And if he does that, everything will always be all right, no matter what, up to and including serial murder. In these calls, do you hear a mother who ever taught her son any limits to his behavior? Do you hear a mother who taught her son how to handle his own feelings, much less her own feelings? Do you hear a mother who processes all her feelings through whomever is available, usually her spawn? There's something I like to explain to people who don't live on planets with people of the Watts species. People of the Watts species do not have the ability to understand boundaries, and that their children could have different thoughts, feelings, and values as their own. That's why I think Cindy sounds like a wounded animal every time the prospect of losing Chris is even broached. It's as if she's dying herself. I believe that's because she can't separate the idea of herself and her child. To her, they're one and the same, and she must preserve whatever idea she has of her own image of perfection, and therefore his perfection. No wonder she's shocked beyond belief that he hauled off and killed his children. She can't picture ever getting angry enough to kill a baby or a child. She would never do that. So of course Chris would never kill his. Or even if he did kill his children, she can't be seen as someone who would kill her children or grandchildren. And to her, it's the same thing. So to Cindy, I believe, allowing the world to believe her son murdered his children is tantamount to allowing the world to go on believing that she herself murdered those children. Go ahead and search Cindy Watts' interview on YouTube, and I defy you to find a clip where she isn't singularly focused on getting her feelings and her grievances resolved immediately. On the other hand, go ahead and believe what you want about Shanann, because in Cindy's eyes, she was a horrible person, and she will do anything to get you to believe that. Up to and including working behind the scenes to form a secretive mob-like club. Once you pass initiation, which is done by either getting your name on Chris's callers list or worming your way into the hearts of the Watts family by indulging their need for sympathy and belief, she'll accept you. That includes the most recent crash and seeming implosion of a grandiose, overproduced effort to launch a 35C petition for Chris. If you saw my last video, you know how I feel about that, but if you haven't, I've linked to it in the description below. I've said this over and over, and other creators have said this over and over, that Chris took a plea deal. And when he did so, he made several definitive proclamations. Some people still want us to believe that this vital piece of the process never happened. I've looked to see if I can see Chris making these proclamations on camera, but I couldn't, so I found another example of what that looks like. My understanding is that the Watts were in the room when these proclamations were made, but I don't know for sure. This is an example of what it looks like when a convicted felon makes his plea before a judge. Please be aware, this is not from the Watts case, and It's not in Colorado, it's in Ohio. So things may be different, but I've seen these pleadings take place in many states. Just remember, when you watch, I'm pretty sure Watts were in the room. So even if they weren't in the room, they know that Chris said these things in front of a judge. Take a look.
Judge or to a jury. Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
You are waiving your right to confront witnesses by cross-examination. You're waiving your right to compel witnesses to come to court and to testify using the power of subpoena. Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
You are waiving your right to have the state prove its case against you beyond a reasonable doubt, and you're waiving your right to remain silent. This is a complete admission of guilt, and I can sentence you today. Do you understand all of the rights that you're giving up by pleading guilty?
Yes, ma'am.
Has anyone made any threats or promises to get you to change your plea?
No.
Are you under the influence of any drugs or alcohol?
No, ma'am.
Are you a U.S. citizen?
Yes, ma'am.
Are you satisfied with the representation of your counsel?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then how do you plead to the amended charge of assault?
Guilty.
You want to tell me what happened here, Mr. Adams?
When I walked out onto Randy, performing oral sex on a 5-year-old, and I blacked out, and then I pushed him off of him, and I just started hitting him, and I told everyone to call the cops. I was yelling, call the cops, and I put him outside and waited until the cops got there.
Mr. Perez, do you want to say anything about the facts?
Judge, based on the facts in this case, my client, who has no prior criminal history whatsoever, is 20 years old, came out one part of the house to another and to a darkened room and saw this 17-year-old male performing oral sex on a 5-year-old. The 5-year-old had his pants down. It completely took Ricky aback. It was a horrific scene that he saw. He reacted by doing, I think, what anybody would do. He went and pulled this individual off the 5-year-old. He reacted by striking him a few times based on the passion of the event and what he perceived. He actually got physically sick from seeing it and threw up. He, at the same time, was yelling for somebody else in the house to call the police. He then took this individual outside and had him wait there until the police showed up. So what he did was really in the heat of passion in an effort to stop something that he'd never seen before and found horrific. So I don't expect he would ever do anything like that again. He's not exactly sure what happened. He sort of lost control at the moment. And that's what happened that day.
Okay, thank you. Well, based on the facts that have been presented here, I'm going to accept the plea of guilty. The felonious assault 19 CRA 760, that will be dismissed on the prosecutor's motion. You're welcome. There are court costs associated with that dismissal. Do you understand that, Mr. Adams, you will be responsible for that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. There is a motion here from the state for first offender program. Mr. Perez, do you want to say anything about that?
We would concur in that motion, Your Honor, and ask that the court place him in the diversion program, the first offender program. And we'll be asking the court at the conclusion of that to dismiss the case entirely.
Mr. Adams, is there anything that you want me to consider before I make a determination as to whether you will be referred for first offender?
No, ma'am.
All right, well, I had pretrial discussions on this issue with the prosecutor and with counsel. It's been represented that this is a true first offense, that there is no prior record. And based on the facts that were presented to me, as well as the lack of criminal history for the defendant, I will accept the referral here, the recommendation to refer this to diversion, the first offender program.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome. The matter will be reset for any issues on that. So you're going to go downstairs to the probation department. Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Furthermore, and honestly, I don't know why this has gotten so overlooked, but Chris signed a court document in 2019 admitting civil responsibility to the tune of $6 million for the deaths of his family. Maybe something's happened subsequently to supersede this ruling and I'm missing something that should be glaring in my face, but I haven't seen anything that takes this judgment and statement of facts away in this civil suit. Again, this is a civil suit between the Ruzeks and Chris Watts. And it was done so Chris can't reap any financial benefit from the sale of any proceeds from the death of his family. He isn't criminally held liable, even though he already pled guilty. This isn't another criminal conviction. But it certainly will not help any sort of 35C petition. It's a lot like the judgment the Goldmans received for the slaying of their son Ron Goldman by O.J. Simpson. Here's the most important citation from that order, and I quote, "The defendant stipulates that the death of Shanann, Bella, and Celeste was a tremendous loss to plaintiffs, the Ruzeks, and that they have suffered extreme emotional distress and damage as a result of such loss. Chris has signed," that unquote. Chris has signed this document and has agreed to the payment. Now, we all know he won't be able to make this payment. The point is, he cannot reap any benefit from any payment. So, we've established that Chris has told Cindy and Ronnie many times, 11 times on public recorded evidence, and God knows how many other times that we don't know about, to their faces, on the phone, in writing, in a book, in a pleading, in letters, in his civil declaration, that he is culpable for the deaths of his entire family. And yet, do you get the sense that Chris uses us to try to get through to his family because they refuse to listen to him? It's time to listen to him. But no. Watts Island is teeming with predators ready to pick up any morsel of untruth that could exonerate Cindy Watts from being a child murderer's mother. Because it's okay to be a mom of a guy who murdered Shanann, but it's just a bridge too far to ask her to be the mom of a child murderer here on Planet Watts. Now that I've sat through hours and hours of YouTube videos and panels on lives by the creators who have cycled through Planet Watts, I'm here to definitively declare that the stink from Planet Watts is coming directly from the head. Sometimes it's just difficult to know where that head is. Well, in wannabe googly form, let me show you my data. It was impossible not to see a pattern emerge through all these hours of video. But in the tech industry, when we see patterns emerge, we like to make graphs and charts. Sometimes we make them into scores. Anyone remember Clout? Back in around 2012, Clout was the social media platform everyone loved to hate because it ranked your ability to use social media with a Clout score. I consulted for Clout for like 2 years when they lost their press clout after trying to tweak their score model, and it ended up giving Justin Bieber a higher Clout score than Barack Obama. But I digress. My experience at Clout gave me an idea. With all the toxins flying around Planet Watts, I thought I would create a score too. Only my score is a Hazmat Score. Now, I will be very transparent about how I derived my scores, and you'll see that it's rather unscientific, but it's still very representative of how the players have conducted themselves in this case, based on information that's available for all of you. Also, I'm not trying to imply that I'm using the same formula as Clout here. Their formula was far more complicated. Clout just inspired the idea for a score. As you'll see, I took a spreadsheet and I cataloged all the toxic behaviors that is observable through discovery and video evidence in this case. I took categories of those behaviors and I grouped them and then assigned a number to each group of behaviors. In the first group, there's verbal aggressiveness, passive aggressiveness, gossip, and backstabbing. In the second group, there's bullying, harassing, accusing, and victim blaming with no proof. In the third group, There's revenge, sabotage, physical abuse, and real-life consequences. In the fourth group, there's adultery. The fifth, there's murder and accessory to murder. So in those groups, if you do one of those behaviors, in the first group you get a score of 1, in the second group you get a score of 2, and so on. I divided my list of toxins into 2 groups. Those that occurred before August 13, 2018, which is the date of the murders, and those that happened afterward. Because as far as I'm concerned, any toxic behavior toward anyone but the convicted felon, in this case, deserves to be doubled down. I limited the group to the primary family members and grouped all the hangers-on into one group because they all have the same motive and are seemingly influenced by the same puppet masters. I didn't include a behavior if there wasn't factual confirmation from multiple sources that these things happened. Everything I say here is verifiable somewhere. If it isn't, I'm willing to be proven wrong. And of course, I didn't include the innocent Bella, Cece, and Nico. Once I calculated the numbers and made them into a pie, the results were illuminating, but not surprising. Take a look. Okay, remember, I'm not a data scientist. I am not a... I only come from the tech industry and have worked on a lot of these types of things, and I just kind of created this myself with the idea coming from the fact that I used to work at a company that had scores. So what I did was I took every person, all the primary characters in this situation. I listed all their toxic conduct, and then I put a score. And the score is based on, there's 5 different levels. And I already talked about those. And then I scored them. And in blue here is everything that happened after the murder. And those scores double after the murder. All right? So just for an example, with Cindy Watts, we have that she didn't go to Chris and Shanann's wedding. We have that she didn't go to the engagement party. That she told Shanann's mother, your daughter doesn't love my son. That she blocked Shanann from Facebook. And everything gets a score. So I feel that it was pretty... It was sabotage and real life consequences for her to not go to her son's wedding because she doesn't like her son's choice of a partner. That was extremely damaging, and it caused them not to talk for a couple of years. So that's why I gave that a 3. So what I'm going to do is link to this in the description box so you can have access to this and go through it, but I'm not going to leave it open. You're welcome to comment on my choices of scores. But I did keep Shanann in here and the Rusex because, I wanted to be fair. But these are all the things that I could come up with that Shanann and the Rusex did in this scenario based on public information. And yes, I did go through Cindy's, or the book that Kathleen was writing for Cindy. And I also went through the Cindy's response to Sandy's letter in Discovery. So I know everything that Cindy has to say about these things, and this is my judgment call. And the reason Chris's score is higher than Cindy's here is because he's the one that murdered 3 people. And so his score here, come down to Chris Watts, is a 40. Because on that day, he murdered 3 people. And his score doubles. So, I hope that explains things for you. Therefore, Cindy gets a score of 20.3. Jamie gets a score of 19. Ronnie gets a score of 15. The social media trolls get a score of 15. So Ronnie and the social media trolls are kind of arm in arm with each other. And Shanann and the Rusex, justifiably and predictably, aren't on the hazmat radar because they're the victims. Does that tell you anything? So do you see the pattern I see? Which family had the highest collective hazmat score? Which family ended up with a convicted murderer behind bars? Which family refuses to face reality? Who's had to suffer from all of this? Well, as you know, all of us, but most of all, by far, these people. And those are the faces that keep me going. Let me just pause and ask a question of the Watts family right here. After looking at that hazmat chart, what could Shanann have possibly done to justify being murdered? And if you think that anything she did could have come to even close to being a justification for murder, what do you call everything you've been doing since the day she died? That's just a very logical question normal people ask themselves when they're not consumed with hate, blame, and resentment. I shouldn't even have had to ask that question. In July 2019, 11 months after the murder, Frank Ruzek made a very special appearance in front of Shanann's house to thank people for their support and prayers, to beg people to stop the harassment, and to put out a call to action for the social media platforms to help stop online bullying. As a founding advisor of the Center for Humane Technology, this greatly piqued my interest. Where are we a year and a half later? I'd say it's even worse. A year and a half later, the Watts' desperate need to be exonerated in the eyes of the public keeps forcing Chris or others to reveal more heinous information from this horrific act. It's forcing more of his witnesses to whistleblow on him just to stop the madness, to try to convince the Watts that this really happened. Further exposing the victims to more mudslinging and more victim shaming. And further exposing ways for opportunists to scam as much money as possible from the most gullible people who care about this case. How many people involved in this case have had to buy firearms or security systems as a result of believing in Shanann's innocence? And how insane is that? I do happen to know for a fact that the social media platforms' feet have been held to the fire about online bullying and harassment. At the same time, as you can see, there's a major backlash when social media companies create what's perceived to be widespread cancel culture. People start to feel targeted, even though it's their content that's targeted, not the individual. It's definitely not okay that there's not a better way for victims to get a better response from the social media platforms, so they know exactly what's happening and why. This is a very, very slow and tedious process of holding them accountable and creating a better way for people to have a safe space on the internet. But I know that's exactly what many well-meaning people and organizations are doing to hold social media companies accountable to their users. In the meantime, this is what we have to do to combat the algorithm and ensure that these clickbaiting, victim-shaming, tit-sucking trolls do not win. Do not give them any attention whatsoever. They win by getting attention. Any click, any thumbs up, any comment, any interaction, even a thumbs down, anything, even a thumbs down. If you give it attention, either positive or negative, it will keep coming and it will never go away. That's another reason I'm not overplaying the videos and content here. I don't want to give it too much play. This is about the people who were senselessly murdered and allowing her remaining loved ones to heal from that in peace. I started working on this case because I was interested in the familial dynamics that may have led to the murders of these beautiful people. I was temporarily sidelined by the Lana BS, then quickly figured out that, especially when I started immediately getting comments from trolls and I could tell where they were coming from, that was all one and the same. The Watts family mantra is, we want the truth. We want the truth. Sorry, but
You can't handle the truth!
no matter how many hangers-on you try to pull down with you, the facts won't change that. You talk about getting baptized and you say with your words that you're following Christ. I know something about Christ, and your actions tell a vastly different story. If you want an example of Christ's grace, look at the fact that your son's life has been spared because the Ruseks had the mercy on his life. Do you know what a blessing that was? And instead of seeing it that way, you can't get over the fact that he, and therefore you, are seen as a child murdering family. We don't see it that way. We see him as a murderer whose life was spared, and you as a family who's looking at that gift horse in the mouth every single day, despite how many times he's told you flat out that he did it and he's prepared to pay that price. Chris is not a martyr, he's a murderer. And it's not anyone else's job to change that or to make you feel better about that. It's also not Chris's job, or the taxpayers' jobs, or YouTubers' jobs to make all this go away for you. But you somehow feel entitled to barf all of your junk all over everyone else and ask everyone else to clean it up. And no matter how long you hate Shanann and want other people to hate Shanann, we and they will never, ever hate Shanann. In fact, every time you villainize her, you widen the window of hell that her life must have been on your planet before Chris senselessly wiped it out. I'm going to guess by now that you've exhausted all your legal options. At least, I'd hope that you'd recognize that the thing that crashed and burned last week without even getting off the ground was your last hope. So with whatever resources you have left, I would like to cordially invite you to reprioritize your brains and your lives. Chris Watts did kill his wife and children. Chris Watts will never get out of jail. Cindy Ronnie and Jamie Watts did not kill Shanann and her children, and we see that. No matter how hard you or anyone else try, we will see Shanann the way we see Shanann, as the beautiful light being that she was. Which brings me back to our primary focus. Shanann, Bella, Cece, and Nico. The rest of this video is for the Rusek family. I don't know if they will ever see this, but them not seeing this doesn't make it any less true. I don't know if I'll ever get through this without breaking down, so please bear with me. I cry a lot. It's my mental illness. You raised such an incredible, powerful, vibrant, giving, open-hearted, trusting, generous, brilliant mother. Sometimes when you do great things like that, people who couldn't do that and have no idea how need to find ways to tear you down. You did all the right things in raising Shanann, and you're doing all the right things now. You have held yourselves with grace, dignity, and honor in the face of the worst kind of human depravity. Like so many other creators, I've cried pools of tears over your family. And if I'm honest, it's one of the reasons I started this channel. I have a pressing need to explain that the depravity from this alien island is not normal. Shanann wasn't just a normal girl raised by a quiet family in North Carolina. She was extraordinary. She is extraordinary. So I know you didn't need to hear that from me, but you just keep doing what you're doing. Go through your grief, show us your Dieter videos, tell us how you feel. Fuck the trolls. We know who you are, and we know who they are. They are nothing. And they are using Shanann's death to try to become something. I give it 2 more years. 2 more dreadful, painful, hopefully a lot less years. And those mofos will find some other tit to suck. In the meantime, I'll be here to tear down whatever ridiculousness they try to bring to this or any other victim of trauma and true crime. Thanks for coming.